Welcome into Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, Braves at the break, breaking the curse, and deals for the cap. It's all next. It's Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. Hitting Hard is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We ask you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can get the latest episodes of Hitting Hard as soon as they become available. Check us out on the SiriusXM app as well, and give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. Well, the Braves had a successful weekend down in Tampa. They took 2 out of 3, lost yesterday, but as they go into the break right now, they are 60-29 on the season. First team to get to 60 wins. And look, this could not have been scripted any better. Aside from injuries and aside from guys being hurt, this thing could not have gone any better for the Atlanta Braves. So now we hit the faux midway point, because obviously we are 89 games into the season. So now we get this little bit of a break, and we saw Max Fried pitch yesterday down in Gwinnett. So he's working his way through. They expect him to make 3 starts down in Gwinnett. But when that happens, and again, once they start to get all of these guys back, I'm not even sure how much better they can be, because they've been outstanding thus far, and they have completely dominated the National League. Ronnie's the MVP of the league. Sean Murphy's probably a top 5 candidate to be MVP. Murphy, as we go in the break, he's got 17 homers, 55 RBI, hitting .306 with a .400 on-base percentage and a .999 OPS. Look at some of the OPSs for some of the players. .999 for Murphy. 926 for Olsen, 990 for Ronald Acuna. Now, I'll tell you who the biggest surprise has been. It's been 2 players. One is Orlando Arcia. Didn't see him hitting .294 at the All-Star break and being the starter at shortstop. And while we knew he was a good defensive shortstop and he could hold his own with the glove, his offense has been outstanding. And it's basically been for pennies on the dollar price-wise compared to a Dansby Swanson. Now, that doesn't take away from what Dansby has meant to the Braves, but again, they're paying him way less. I mean, $3 million compared to, 14, 17 million or what have you per year. So the fact that he's got 7 homers, 28 RBI, he has missed 20 games. That's been the only downfall for him, but hitting .294 with a .345 on base and a .769 OPS, he's been one of the big surprises this year. The other big surprise for me has been Marcelo Zuna, and let's give him some flowers. I mean, he's had a nice bounce back year. Look, he's not been a 180 hitter. He's not been an unproductive guy. He's not been a guy who's been a one-trick pony where he's got, 10 homers and 16 RBI. He's been a guy that has come through in the clutch for this team. 17 homers, 40 RBI, hitting .250. He's got an .800 OPS and scored 36 runs. I'll be honest with you, that's more than what I would have thought that we would have gotten from a Marcelo Zuna. So he's been a nice surprise. For all the different things about, for everybody wanting him DFA'd, traded, this, that, and the other. And I was in the camp of, at some point you have to DFA him, but he really has bounced it, and turned it around. And starting in, obviously, with his May and then into June and July, look, he's been doing it for the Atlanta Braves. He's been able to just kind of get through all of the storm and weather the storm of all the bad publicity and everything else. And he's found himself in a nice position. And more than likely, and again, he is a popular clubhouse guy. More than likely, he's going to be here through the rest of this year. There's really no reason to DFA him at this point. So again, you're not saving any money by doing it. So, but he's had his production that has been, up to par at least. At least he's not hitting a $180 or something ridiculous like that. He's holding his own. I'll tell you who else, when we talked about this, a couple of weeks ago, Eddie Rosario has had a nice bounce back year, 14 homers, 43 RBI, 254 batting average. He is solidified left field in the sense that you don't feel like you're desperately trying to find an everyday starting left fielder. Now, will the Braves add in, a left fielder at the break? Potentially. They may potentially find themselves another bat, maybe a guy who can hit from the right-hand side and play some left field that, again, they can face left-handers. But again, Eddie Rosario has had a nice bounce back year, and he's actually hit lefties fairly well. So that's good news for the Braves, that they don't feel like that they're desperate to go out and get another left fielder. Now, from the pitching aspect, again, Strider and Elder have been terrific. Elder's been bounced around here, of late, but still 2.97 ERA, 7-2. Again, you've got 18-4 out of Strider and Elder with 246 strikeouts in 210 innings pitched. Those two guys have been horses at the very top of the rotation. And the fact that they haven't had Wright and Fried to rely on, very few starts from both of those guys, the fact that they have had that kind of production out of those two guys, where, again, we knew Strider was maybe the best young, pitcher in baseball. Now he's proven that. Now that he's got, a spotlight more shown on him, that he's been able to just pitch his way through it, and he's been outstanding this year. Coming into the break, the fact he's got 11 wins, that's why they're both all-stars this year. Elder was leading the league in ERA. That's been bumped up a little bit, but still, he's had an outstanding year. He's obviously made clutch start after clutch start. Another guy who's had a nice bounce back year has been Charlie Morton. 9-6, 3.43 ERA. Only the 10 home runs that he's given up in 97 innings pitched thus far. That's not a fantastic number, but it's not all of that bad. And again, 111 strikeouts in 97 innings. He's averaging over 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. While Minter has struggled, again, they've gotten some good contributions out of a Kirby Yates, out of a Nick Anderson, Colin McHugh. They've gotten some good contributions out of their bullpen. Would not be surprised to see them add a bullpen arm or two when all is said and done. But I think now you don't have to try to go out and desperately find a starting pitcher, right? If Max Fried is going to be back in the next few weeks, if Kyle Wright eventually gets back, you've got Michael Soroka. That's again, part of the rotation. I'm not feeling that you have to go out, and especially with the way that this lead is, and especially with how good the Braves have been, I don't know that you have to give up a lot of assets to go out and find a starting pitcher right now. You don't feel that sense of desperation that maybe 30, 45 days ago that you felt that, how are we going to get through all of this? Well, Morton, Elder, and Strider have stepped up their game, and you found enough quality starts out of the Schusters and the Dylan Dodds and guys like that of the world that, okay, we've kind of overcome the worst part of our schedule. We had a huge June, and we predicted all of that, right? That as the schedule lightened up in June, and certainly it's not that daunting even come July, that, okay, if they can open up this thing and get themselves a nice lead, maybe you don't have to go out and give up a whole bunch of assets to acquire talent. Maybe you don't have to go out and give up, the farm to go out and find a starting pitcher because you're behind in the division or what have you. So the Braves have done a remarkable job to battle through injuries, battle through everything else. And the fact that they have this lead at 60-29 in the division just speaks, again, to their talent development. We talked about this the other day. Talent development, scouting department, their general manager, signing these guys to contracts. Just on and on and on and on and on and all of the different things. But it's been an outstanding season for the Atlanta Braves as they head in the All-Star break, and there's no reason to think that this trend won't continue. The Braves should certainly be the front runners in the National League to find themselves in the World Series. Get the World Series, anything can happen, but they should be certainly the front runners to find themselves in the World Series with the way that the National League is played out. All right, this episode of Hittin' Hard is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and as we're at the All-Star break, FanDuel has got you covered where You can take your first big swing at betting on MLB on FanDuel to get 10 times your first bet in bonus bets up to $200. So just bet 20 bucks and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend on betting everything from money lines to the over-unders to who's going to hit the first home run, everything in between. Now it's on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use, and you get paid instantly. So head to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today and sign up to claim your no-sweat first bet where you get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose at FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON. FanDuel's the official partner of Major League Baseball. I came across an interesting article. This is from Sports Illustrated, and I'll give the writer credit to it. Let me see here. Who is the writer for this? Jeremy Brenner is the writer for this article. And they talk about breaking the curse for Falcons quarterback Desmond Ritter. And this was an interesting stat, and I give him credit for pulling this up. Since 2013, so that's a decade ago, only Mike Glennon and Jacoby Brissett have more than 30 starts in their career. Both of those players are journeymen. Neither can say that they have been a franchise quarterback. And yes, that is true. And now, again, obviously, where most of your first-round quarterbacks come from is top part of the draft, right? First-round guys, high-caliber guys at the very top of the draft, right? That's where you find most of the top quarterbacks, saying about the first top 15, 20 picks of the draft. And that's historically, again, where you're finding the best quarterbacks. But I think the thing that makes Desmond Ritter a little bit different from a Jacoby Brissett or from a Mike Glennon, who it's interesting that the two guys that have made 30 starts have been guys that are North Carolina State quarterbacks, and they essentially followed one right after the other. There was a year in between. Glennon played through 2012, and then Brissett had to sit out a year for 13, and then he started in 2014. But interesting that basically the two NC State quarterbacks that followed one another are the guys that have made, the most starts over the last decade as far as a starting quarterback picked in the third round. But here's the difference. And I know that these things necessarily don't matter, when you look at transitioning from the NFL from college into the NFL. But Mike Glennon and Jacoby Brissett in their final 2 years, where they put up their big numbers in their final 2 years, they were only 15-11 in their final two seasons as college quarterbacks. 15-11 combined record over a 2-year period. And NC State didn't really do anything, right? I mean, they've been a floundering program. They had some success under Phillip Rivers, when they had Norm Chow and all that going on. And okay, they had a little bit of success, here or there. Just a few years ago with Finley and Chubb and all those guys, they had some success, but they've never really been a successful franchise. And so again, Mike Glennon, Jacoby Brissett, they put up nice numbers. They put up good numbers. I think Glennon was a 30 touchdown quarterback in college, but they were 15-11. Desmond Ritter for his college career was 42-6. He took a program that certainly is not at the level that NC State has been and elevated them to where they got themselves in the national semifinals. They were the little engine that could. They broke the mold as far as being a group of 5 team that found its way into the playoffs. And again, obviously, I know that was a really talented team that final year. Sauce Gardner is maybe the best cornerback now in the NFL. A lot of really good players on that team. But certainly Desmond Ritter as the trigger man had a lot to do with that. And while I understand that some of those things don't translate from college to pro, the fact is one of the biggest reasons that I like Desmond Ritter coming out of college, and I was excited, and he was my favorite draft pick when the Falcons took him a couple years ago, was that he's a winner. And there is something, there is an intangible element about, are you a quarterback that wins games or not? Jacoby Brissett has been a serviceable quarterback. Mike Glennon is basically, one step above a bum. Okay, I mean, let's be real. I mean, that those two guys, are not very good, and they didn't have a whole lot of success even in the college level. Desmond Ritter was a guy who won a whole crap ton of games in college. I think he's got one of the 5 most wins in college football for Cincinnati. And you can say, well, what's the competition like? Yeah, but normally guys don't elevate their program to that kind of level. Normally guys don't elevate their program to the level of being a national semifinalist in college football at Cincinnati. That's reserved for Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. I mean, that's reserved for those programs. That's not reserved for, the Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati. So the fact is that this kid is a winner through and through. And I think the other difference is this offense doesn't have to be quarterback reliant. Like, this offense doesn't have to put all of the weight on the shoulders of the quarterback. I think in the Matt Ryan era, it would be fair to say that, Matt was the focal point of the offense. And I'm not saying that quarterbacks aren't a focal point of offenses, but again, Matt was the focal point of the offense. This offense is built to where he doesn't have to be the focal point. Our running game, our short passing game, our offensive line, like, that's going to dictate a lot of our success. Now, look, Desmond Ritter goes out and has an MVP caliber season. I've said before, look, they're in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's the reality of it. When your quarterback has an MVP caliber season, you find yourself in the Super Bowl at that point. So I'm not expecting that out of Desmond Ritter. But Desmond Ritter doesn't have to be a guy that carries the weight of this team on his shoulders. He doesn't have to be a guy that puts up gargantuan numbers. They're not going to let him throw it 500 times, I don't believe, this season. They're going to rely on their run game. They're going to do what they do best on offense. They have a playing personality. As my friend Bo Bach would say, they have a playing personality. And that doesn't necessarily revolve around the quarterback. Now, look, I think Desmond Ritter is going to have a good year, and I need him to be good in the red zone. And I think he can be a 25 touchdown quarterback, where, again, if you throw 25 touchdowns in an NFL season, that's a really good number. Okay. May not be the 40 that Aaron Rodgers puts up, or Tom Brady, or Pat Mahomes, or what have you, in that kind of class, but you're a 25 touchdown quarterback. You've had success in this league. And I think that's the biggest difference, is that they don't ask Desmond Ritter to have to carry this offense, that they're not looking at Desmond Ritter to carry this offense. There's enough personnel around him that if they get the ball in other people's hands, that they can help shoulder the load. And they're not a desperately quarterback reliant offense. And it's not a matter of making guys better in this and the other. You have a lot of high caliber, high draft picks that you've selected for your offense. First round offensive linemen, obviously London and Pitts, top 10 picks. You have a lot invested in other guys on this offense. Bijan Robinson now, right? So Desmond Ritter doesn't have to be the focal point. And he's a smart quarterback who doesn't turn the football over. And that's a big reason why I think that he's going to have a lot of success in this league, is because he's a winner, he's a smart quarterback, and he doesn't turn the football over. If you can be a winner and not turn the football over, you'll play for a long time in this league. I don't care if it's a starter, backup, whatever. If you're that kind of quarterback, you can be around for a long time. So let's see if Desmond Ritter can break the curse when all is said and done, that, 30 starts is kind of that magical number that Mike Glennon and Jacoby Brissett have had over the last decade. I think Desmond Ritter is going to be much better than that, and hopefully it starts this season. All right, as you listen into Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, make sure that you go into our whatever podcast platform that you're listening on and let us know that you're an everyday listener to the program. So we like to call them our everyday or so. We thank you so much for being a part of our ever-growing community and obviously being on this journey and this ride with us. So let us know on whatever platform, leave us a comment that you're an everyday listener to the program, as we said, our everydayers. Well, the Hawks are making moves. Hawks are making more moves. So veteran guard Patty Mills has been traded to the Atlanta Hawks. So the deal is the Oklahoma City Thunder, who had just literally acquired Patty Mills from Houston. They'll send Mills to Atlanta in exchange for Rudy Gay, so he didn't last very long. Guard Ty Washington, he didn't last very long. Usman Garuba, who we talked about on Friday, he didn't last very long, and a second-round pick. Now, here's the other thing, too, okay, is that they say per Woj, doing his Woj bomb, there's no guarantee that Mills even remains in Atlanta either. His $6.8 million expiring contract has had value in trades all offseason, and that's expected to continue. So the first thing is that the Hawks saved themselves $4.5 million in cap space in a move like this, and then they have $6.8 million that is an expiring contract in Mills, so maybe you get something back for him on that expiring contract and basically don't have to give up much, okay? Now, is this all about making our roster better and building a championship caliber roster? Heck no. There's nothing about this that is about building a better roster. This is about, okay, we're going to pay DeJounte Murray a whole bunch of money starting next year. Okay, we've dipped our toe in the luxury tax. Now let's find our way out of it. Like, this is all about cap space. Can we be honest? I mean, can we have an honest discussion that these moves are all about cap space? I don't care, again, what Landry Fields spins or Kyle Korver spins to me or Quinn Snyder spins. I don't care what their spin is. This is all about cap space. This is all about freeing us up from the luxury tax. Again, you don't make these moves where you're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic if this isn't about cap space and expiring contracts. And what have we talked about before on this show repeatedly? First off, I don't believe that they're going to go in the luxury tax. Second of all, that again, the way that you get out from underneath this is you start to acquire expiring contract. Well, guess what Patty Mills is? And most likely he won't even be here on this roster. Just like Rudy Gay was never going to be here on this roster. He wasn't ever going to be here. And Ty Washington, they saved money on that trade. Now they're saving more money. And now you got Mills, who most likely will get dealt because he's an expiring contract. Or, worst case is he'll sit on the end of the bench and be an expiring contract. Like, this is what these moves are. John Collins was the first step in trying to build a long-term roster that could manage the cap. And I'll give him credit. Again, we talked about DeJounte Murray. That's a fabulous move. That's a great move. I'm very much in favor of giving him that big contract extension. I got no problem or no issue with that. But again, they're trying to dance around the lines and dance around the outside of having to pay everybody else or trying to build a roster. Again, if they were really embracing the cap, all of these moves wouldn't be attached with the financial flexibility of them or cap space or expiring contracts. Like, if they were really trying to build a championship quality roster, and look, maybe they do all this and then they go get Pascal Siakam. Maybe. Again, the reports are that things have completely stalled on that end, but maybe they do that. Maybe they surprise us. But as of right now, nothing about our roster is better. Miss me with draft picks, okay? I got enough draft picks on this roster. And I have guys that probably aren't going to play in, for the big club. They're probably going to be down in College Park. Why would Buffkin play up here on the Atlanta's roster and get 5 or 6 minutes when he can start 30 times down at College Park and play 30 minutes a night? So this has all been about cap flexibility, moving money around, and literally it's moving deck chairs on the deck of the Titanic. That's what this is. This doesn't inspire me. And we just had this discussion just a couple of days ago. I'm like, Ty Washington and who's the other guy? Usman Garuba. Like, what? What are we doing? Well, now we've moved those guys out for a 34-year-old player that's on an expiring contract. Oh, okay. We're just trying to make money work. That's what this is. This has not been an offseason about bettering the Hawks roster. This has not been about building a championship caliber roster. This is not turning the corner and building everything. Now, again, we're in summer league, okay? So we can say that, oh, well, we got time and all this kind of stuff. Okay, well, the league year is underway. They're in summer league right now. Guess what? It won't be long before we get to training camp. It's already almost middle of July. Won't be long before we get to training camp. Won't be long before the season starts. The godforsaken NBA season lasts for 1,000 years. Like it never ends in the regular season. So it won't be all that long before this gets cranked up and going. But right now, the Hawks are not a better team. They've not done anything to improve this roster. Sorry. I mean, again, but moving salaries around and getting more cap flexibility is not building a championship caliber roster. And I don't care if they go in the luxury tax or out of the luxury tax. I'm just talking about from a basketball perspective that they are not a better roster now. They're not. They're not a better roster than when we last left the Atlanta Hawks, when they were getting beat in Boston. They've not become a better basketball team. And that's the thing that I'm concerned about. That's the thing that, again, you can tell me Landry Fields and all this kind of stuff. If Tony Ressler says they're not going in the luxury tax, they're not going in the luxury tax. Flexibility or his spin or narrative or whatever, be darned. They're not going in the luxury tax. And I don't know how you build a quality roster with a super max player on your roster and not dip your toe in the luxury tax, or have a $30 million off guard, or a $20+ million center, or a $24 million small forward. I don't know how you build a quality roster with that, other than hoping that everybody elevates their game. That's not a game plan that I want to be in. So right now, the Hawks, all they've done is move the deck chairs across the Titanic. That's all that they've done right now. I don't think that this roster has been better at all for the Hawks. All right, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen. Be sure to go in and leave us a comment on whatever podcast platform that you listen on. Let us know that you're an everyday listener to the program, that we call them our everydayers. Let us know in the comment section that you're an everydayer to the program, listening in 5 days a week. We ask you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can get the latest episodes of Hittin' Hard as soon as they become available. Check us out on the Sirius XM app as well, and give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. Back with you tomorrow. This has been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.